Okay, have you ever felt like you're walking around with one of those, like, kick me signs taped to your back?
Interesting you should phrase it like that.
Oh.
Well, because today we're looking at Hexagram 39 from the Yi Jing, that ancient Chinese text.
Yeah.
And guess what it's called? Jian, which translates to obstruction or difficulty.
Oh, wow. Okay, so for those of us who maybe aren't super familiar with the Yi Jing, can you give us like a quick rundown of what it's all about?
Yeah, totally. So basically, it's like this ancient guidebook for navigating all the ups and downs of life, you know? And it uses this system of 64 hexagrams.
6'4".
64, yeah. And each one is like, a snapshot of a specific situation or challenge. And each one has advice or insight on how to approach it.
So kind of like a really old school self-help book.
Exactly.
But with a lot more symbolism.
Yeah, way more symbolism.
Awesome.
And this Hexagram Jian, it uses some pretty powerful imagery to get its point across.
Oh, okay. Like what?
Well, it's represented by the mountain trigram over the water trigram. So picture a mountain totally blocking the flow of a river.
Oh, I get it. Yeah. It's like a feeling of being totally stuck.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And there's this Chinese phrase associated with it. It's, let me see if I can remember.
Something about pitfalls.
Yes. Pitfalls at the door. Door. It's basically saying, imagine you're walking along, everything's going great. Yeah. And then, bam. Pitfalls. Out of nowhere.
Yikes. Okay, yeah, that sounds a little too familiar, actually. So the hexagram doesn't mess around.
Nope. The text itself is just as blunt. It talks about, like, heavy rain and snow making the journey difficult.
Oh, man. It's like all that weight piling on,
Exactly. And it gets even better. Another image it uses is a lame person struggling to walk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, to illustrate how much effort every single step takes.
Okay, so we've established that this hexagram is speaking to some seriously tough times.
Right.
So is the advice just to, give up and wallow in misery?
Not at all. Actually, it's quite the opposite. The core message is all about patience and perseverance.
Really?
Yeah. It's like, don't make any rash decisions while you're in this state of obstruction. Just wait for the right moment to act.
Okay, so instead of freaking out and making things worse, Jian is more about taking a step back.
Yeah, like think things through, be strategic. Yeah. Don't let your emotions run the show. Oh, and it also emphasizes seeking guidance from a great person.
A great person? Like what? Some kind of ancient guru up on a mountaintop?
Well, not necessarily. It could be anyone who has experience and wisdom to offer, to give you a fresh perspective on things.
So like a mentor or even just a really good friend.
Exactly.
Okay. So you're saying it's okay to ask for help.
Absolutely. In fact, Jian is encouraging it. And what's fascinating is that it doesn't just give general advice for dealing with obstruction. It breaks it down into different areas of life.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're talking about things like health.
Yes.
And lost items.
Yeah.
And love. And even legal matters. Like, how does this idea of obstruction, this feeling of being stuck, how does that play out in these specific areas of life?
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued now. Let's dive into some of these areas, see how this ancient wisdom can maybe help us navigate our modern world, right?
Exactly.
I'm especially curious about the health aspect. I mean, what can an ancient text tell us about, our well-being today?
Well, for one thing, it doesn't sugarcoat it. When it comes to health during a time of obstruction, John is basically saying, hey, things can be serious. Pay attention.
Okay, well, that's good advice no matter what.
Right. And it gets even more interesting because it actually calls out certain organs that might be affected.
Like what?
Well, the kidneys, the stomach, the hands and limbs.
Wow, that's pretty specific. It's like it's saying, hey, really listen to your body, especially during tough times.
Exactly. Our physical health is often a reflection of our emotional and mental state. So when we're dealing with obstacles, extra stress and all that, it's super important to pay attention to what our bodies are trying to tell us.
Okay, so we've talked about health, but what about lost items? What does Jian have to say about that?
This is where things get really, really interesting. Jian suggests that during a time of obstruction, lost items are very difficult to recover, maybe even impossible. And I think this raises a really fascinating question. Like, what do we truly consider lost in our lives?
Ooh, yeah, that is a good question. So are we talking about literal lost objects, or is it something more symbolic, like a missed opportunity or a broken dream?
Exactly. Jian is prompting us to look beyond just the surface level, like, what have we truly lost? And maybe, even more importantly, are we holding on to something we need to let go of?
All right. Intense stuff.
Right.
So we've done health, we've done lost items. Let's move on to something a little later.
Yep.
Love.
Love.
Surely Jean has some good advice for, matters of the heart, right?
Well, you might want to buckle up for this one.
Uh-oh. Why?
Well, Gina doesn't exactly paint the rosiest picture of love during times of obstruction.
Really?
Yeah. It talks about, multiple difficulties and a broken image.
Ouch. That's harsh. No sugarcoating there.
Nope. But I think is a really good reminder that relationships are often tested when we're going through challenges.
Makes sense.
So it's an invitation to really take an honest look at the relationship, what's causing these difficulties. And can this breakage be repaired? Or is it time to move on?
So instead of just ignoring the issues, you're saying Jian is confront them head on.
Exactly. It's about taking control and making conscious choices about the relationship. And lastly, let's talk about the legal stuff.
Okay, yeah, legal matters. What kind of wisdom does Jian offer there?
Well, it's pretty straightforward. It basically warns against pursuing lawsuits during times of obstruction.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a bad idea. It could lead to even more complications, maybe even danger.
I guess that makes sense. If you're already feeling blocked and frustrated, adding a legal battle on top of that.
Right. It's probably not going to end well.
Not going to help.
It just reinforces that core message we talked about before.
Patience.
Patience, yeah.
Yeah.
Avoid rash actions. Think before you act.
Okay, so even though this hexagram is called obstruction, it's not about giving up. It's not about being defeated.
No, not at all.
It's more about, how do we navigate those obstacles with wisdom and intention?
Exactly. And that's why I think Jian is still so relevant today, even though it's, thousands of years old. It speaks to that human experience of facing challenges, and it offers a really helpful framework for approaching them with clarity and resilience.
Right. So it's not just about accepting that life throws us curveballs. It's about understanding the nature of those curveballs, figuring out how to deal with them.
Exactly. It's like a roadmap for navigating difficult times. And that's why those changing lines we talked about are so important. They add another layer, yeah. They make it personal.
Okay, well, I'm dying to hear more about those changing lines.
All right, well, let's dive into that. They make it personal. Each hexagram, it's like this snapshot of a situation, right? But within that snapshot, things are always in motion.
Right, yeah.
And the changing lines, they represent those subtle shifts and transitions happening within that bigger picture.
Okay, so how do these lines actually, change?
Well, each hexagram is made up of 6 lines.
Right.
And each line can be either solid or broken.
Okay.
So kind of like a binary code.
Oh, interesting.
Where each combination of lines creates this unique meaning. And when we say a line is changing, what we mean is it's transitioning from one state to another.
So a solid line could become broken.
Exactly. Or vice versa.
So it's the situation itself is evolving, and the changing lines are giving us these clues on how to adapt to those changes.
Precisely. It's like having a personalized guide for navigating those specific challenges you're facing within that broader theme of obstruction.
Okay, this is blowing my mind a little.
Right.
Can you give me some examples of what these changing lines might actually reveal?
Absolutely. So let's take the first line, for example.
Okay.
It's a changing line that moves from a position of obstruction to one of praise.
Okay.
What's fascinating is that it suggests that by actually facing the challenge directly, by moving towards the obstacle instead of away from it, you might actually earn recognition and respect.
Oh, interesting. So it's what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. By confronting it head on, you come out transformed on the other side.
Exactly. It's about finding the opportunity for growth within that struggle.
I love that. Okay, what about the second line?
The second line, this is something that I think a lot of us can relate to. It's the idea that sometimes those difficulties we're facing, they're not because we're doing something wrong.
Okay.
They're actually the result of external factors beyond our control.
That's reassuring. It's so easy to get caught up in that self-blame when things are tough, what am I doing wrong?
It is. But this line reminds us to take a step back. Zoom out and consider the bigger picture.
Right.
Understand the broader context of the situation. And, don't beat yourself up for things that might be totally out of your hands.
That is a powerful reminder for sure. Okay, on to line 3. What kind of wisdom does that one hold?
This line offers a more cautionary message. It suggests that sometimes we need to recognize when a particular course of action just isn't working. It's about knowing when to retreat or to change direction rather than just continuing to push against that immovable obstacle.
It's like that saying, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging.
Exactly. Sometimes the wisest move is to step back and reassess.
Right.
To be flexible, to be adaptable, recognizing when a change of plans is necessary.
Okay, makes sense. Let's move on to line 4. What does that one tell us?
Line 4 presents this kind of a real dilemma, actually. It suggests that while moving forward might be difficult, retreating might actually cause that problem to persist.
Ooh, that's a tough one. So how do you even begin to make a decision when it feels like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place?
Well, this is where that advice of seeking guidance from a great person, someone with more experience, it really comes in. Line 4 highlights how important it is to get that outside perspective.
So it's not about having all the answers yourself.
Right.
It's about knowing when to reach out for support and, trusting the advice of someone who can see the situation more clearly.
Exactly. Sometimes you just need a fresh pair of eyes, to help you see the path forward.
Totally. All right, let's move on to line 5. What does that one reveal?
Line 5 offers a little glimmer of hope.
Oh, good.
Amidst all the difficulty, it suggests that even in these times of great obstruction, support and help can arrive from really unexpected sources, like friends, allies, or even complete strangers. They might just step in to offer assistance just when you need it the most.
That's encouraging. It's a good reminder that we're not alone in these struggles.
Exactly. We're never truly alone. And then finally, we get to the top line, the 6th line. And this line speaks to the idea that persevering through difficulty can ultimately lead to amazing rewards.
Oh, wow.
It suggests that by enduring those challenges, by staying the course, even when it feels impossible, you might actually emerge stronger, achieve a level of success that you never thought possible.
It's like that final push, at the end of a marathon, you're exhausted, but you know that crossing the finish line is going to be so worth it.
Exactly. It's about trusting the process, knowing that even the most difficult times can ultimately lead to, incredible growth and transformation.
Wow, these changing lines are amazing. They add so much nuance and depth to the whole hexagram.
They really do. It's like they personalize the advice and offer this really specific guidance based on the nuances of the situation.
It's almost like having this personal conversation with the hexagram.
It is, and that level of detail, that's what makes the Yi Jing such a powerful and timeless tool for navigating those challenges we all face.
It's not just about accepting that life throws obstacles our way. It's about understanding those obstacles on a much deeper level, figuring out the best way to deal with them, like having a personalized roadmap for those really, really tough times.
Yeah. The Yi Jing, it doesn't give you all the answers.
Yeah.
But it does give you this framework for understanding those challenges, helping you make better decisions.
So it's not about finding the right answer. It's about gaining a deeper understanding of yourself and the challenges you're facing, using that to make choices that feel right for you.
Precisely. And it's about using the Yi Jing as this tool for self-awareness and growth, and ultimately transformation.
I love that. This has been such an incredible deep dive. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface, but I'm already seeing how the wisdom of Jian, how it applies to my own life, even today.
Me too. And, this is a great transition into a discussion about free will.
Free will, yeah. I was just thinking about that. Like, we keep talking about this ancient text as, a guide, but does that mean that we're kind of giving up our ability to make our own choices?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And honestly, it comes up a lot when people first start learning about the Yi Jing.
Yeah.
But I think the key here is that this system, it's not about dictating your future, or taking away your free will.
Okay.
It's more about giving you a way to understand the energies, the patterns that are already at play.
Right.
And using that understanding to make choices that are more conscious, more informed.
So instead of fate,
right?
It's more like having a map to help you navigate the terrain.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
That's like a roadmap. The Yi Jing, it offers guidance, but ultimately you are the one who decides which path to take.
Okay.
Think of it like, a weather forecast.
Okay, yeah.
It can tell you there's a chance of rain, but you still get to choose, do you bring an umbrella or do you not?
Yeah.
The forecast, it's not forcing you to do anything. Right. It's just giving you information so you can make a smarter decision.
Okay. That makes sense. So how does this all tie back to Jian and, this whole idea of obstruction?
Well, I think Jian is really highlighting this important truth. Even when we feel like we're stuck, limited by circumstances outside of our control, we still have a choice. Always. We can choose how we're going to respond to that obstacle.
Okay.
We can get all frustrated, resentful, fight against it. Or we can see it as an opportunity, like maybe this is a chance for growth, a chance for transformation.
It's like that quote by Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response, there is the space.
Yes.
In that space is our power to choose our response.
Right.
In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
I love that. And that space, that power to choose, that's where free will lives.
Yeah.
And the Yi Jing, especially Jian, it can help us expand that space.
Right.
Give us more clarity, more awareness, so that the choices we're making are actually coming from, a place of strength, a place that is in alignment with what we truly value.
So it's almost like the Yi Jing is a tool to train our intuition.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, like we're strengthening that inner voice.
Yeah.
The one that can guide us towards the best possible path.
Because it's not about, finding the right answer in the text,
Right.
It's more about using the text as almost like a mirror to reflect back on, what's going on inside of us.
Exactly.
And then make choices that feel like they resonate with, who we really are.
That's beautifully said. And that's why I think this system has been around for so long.
Thousands of years, right?
Thousands of years. It's not just about divination. It's not about fortune telling. It's about understanding the patterns of life itself.
Yeah.
And then using that knowledge to navigate those inevitable challenges with, a little more wisdom, a little more grace.
This deep dive has been, honestly, it's been so eye-opening. I'm looking at these challenging on a whole new light now, and I can't wait to dive into those other hexagrams and see, what else I can learn.
I'm so glad to hear that. It's been such a pleasure exploring this with you.
Yeah.
And I really hope our listeners will feel inspired to, pick up the Yi Jing and explore it for themselves.
Yeah. And for anyone who's interested in learning more, we've got some resources in the show notes, lots of great books, websites, even apps these days.
Yeah, there's so much out there. And even if you don't, actually consult the Yi Jing directly, the lessons we talked about today apply to everyone. So next time you're facing a tough situation, an obstacle, whatever it is, just remember, pause.
Reflect.
See if you need some guidance, some support.
Yeah.
And most importantly, trust that inner voice.
Yeah.
Trust your intuition.
And choose growth, even when things feel really, really tough. Remember, even in obstruction, there's always potential. Potential for transformation. Potential for something completely new.
So until next time, may your journey be filled with wisdom and wonder.
And may you always find the strength to face those challenges with grace and resilience.